The transport ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace above Velnar Prime. Katie Brooks pressed her face against the small window and gasped at what she saw. The planet below looked like a giant crystal ball floating in space. Cities made of glass and light covered its surface, and 3 silver moons hung in the purple sky like jewels. Katie was 17 years old and came from Earth. She had dark hair, green eyes, and muscles that came from years of hard training. She was the first human ever invited to study at the Galactic Defense Academy. The academy trained the best warriors from dozens of alien species across the galaxy. The ship's doors opened with a soft hiss. Katie grabbed her bag and walked out, into the docking bay. Everything around her was huge and beautiful. The ceiling stretched up so high she could barely see it. Streams of light flowed along the walls like rivers of fire. Other new students walked around the bay. Katie stared at them in wonder. Some looked like tall, thin people made of glass. Their skin was so clear she could see their blue blood moving underneath. These were the Velnarans who owned this planet. Others looked like giant insects walking on 2 legs. Their eyes were made up of thousands of tiny pieces that glittered like diamonds. A few students floated in the air inside metal suits filled with glowing gas. All of them stared back at Katie. She realized she looked very different from them. She was short and thick compared to the glass people. Her skin was solid and her blood was hidden inside. She could not fly or glow or change shape. She was just human. A voice boomed across the docking bay. All the students turned to look at a tall Velnaran standing on a platform. His skin had silver markings that moved like living tattoos. This was Commander Zethkar, the head of the academy. "Welcome, new students, to the Galactic Defense Academy," he said. His voice was like music played on crystal bells. "You have been chosen from billions of beings across the galaxy. You are here because your species believes you have what it takes to become elite warriors." The commander's eyes found Katie in the crowd. They seemed to look right through her. "Our standards have not changed in 3,000 years. We will not make them easier for anyone. Some species may find our training challenging. Others may find it impossible." Katie felt her face get hot. She knew he was talking about her, about humans, about whether Earth people belonged here at all. "Follow your assigned guides to your living areas," the commander continued. "Training begins at dawn tomorrow. Do not be late." A small floating robot came to Katie. Words appeared on its screen. "Katie Brooks, Earth. Follow me to Combat Training Unit 7. The robot started moving and Katie hurried to keep up. They walked through, hallways made of colored light. Other students moved past them like ghosts. Some traveled on legs, others floated, and a few seemed to teleport from place to place. Katie felt like she was walking through a dream. The robot stopped at a door that slid open when Katie got close. Inside was a room with 4 beds. 3 of them were already taken. "Hello," said a voice that sounded like clicking metal. Katie turned to see one of the insect people standing by a bed. "I am Lyra of the Krex Hive Worlds. You must be the human we heard about." "I'm Katie," she said, trying to smile. "Nice to meet you." A floating suit of armor by the window made electronic sounds. Words appeared on a screen attached to its chest. "I am Phantom of the Ethereal Collective. Your species fascinates us. We have studied your wars." The 4th bed belonged to a Velnaran, who sat reading from a tablet made of light. He looked up at Katie with obvious disgust. "I am Kess of House Velnar. I did not know we would be sharing space with primitives." Katie felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. I'm just here to learn, same as you. Kes laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Humans think they can learn to fight among civilized species. You still use metal weapons and chemical explosives. You have not even mastered energy manipulation. Kes, Lyra said quietly. The human was invited here. The council must see something in her species. The council makes mistakes, Kes said. He went back to his reading tablet. We will see how long the Deathworlder lasts. Katie unpacked her things in silence. Everything she owned looked rough and simple next to the alien technology around her. Her clothes were made of plain fabric, while theirs seemed to be made of light and energy. Her books were actual paper, while they read from floating holograms. That night, Katie lay on her bed and stared at the ceiling. Through the window, she could see the alien city stretching to the horizon. Towers of crystal reached into the sky. Ships moved between them like schools of fish. It was beautiful and terrifying. She thought about home, about Earth with its blue oceans and green forests, about her family who were so proud when she was chosen for this program, about all the people counting on her to prove that humans belonged among the stars. The next morning came too soon. A soft chime woke all the students at the same time. Katie got dressed in her training clothes and followed the others to the dining hall. The food was unlike anything she had ever seen. Some dishes glowed with their own light. Others seemed to move on their own. Katie picked items that looked safe and sat with her roommates. First day nerves? Lyra asked. Her mandibles clicked together in what Katie hoped was a friendly way. A little, Katie admitted. Everything here is so different from home. Different is not always bad, Phantom wrote on his screen. Your species survived on a world that would kill most of us in minutes. That requires special strength. Kes snorted. Brute strength is not what we learn here. We study precision, elegance, and the proper use of advanced technology. Humans know only violence. That's not true, Katie said. We know how to adapt. We know how to survive. Survival is for animals, Kes replied. We are training to be warriors. Before Katie could answer, another chime sounded. All the students stood and began moving toward the training areas. Katie followed the crowd through more halls of light and crystal. They entered a vast room with a ceiling that showed the sky above. The floor was made of some material that felt soft under their feet, but looked hard as stone. Around the edges stood racks of weapons and equipment that hummed with energy. A Velnaran instructor waited for them in the center of the room. He was older than the students, with silver markings that covered half his body. His eyes were cold and sharp like pieces of ice. I am Instructor Velmoth, he said. I have trained champions for 30 years. I have seen students from 40 different species. Some rise to greatness, others wash out in the first week. His gaze fixed on Katie. Today we will see what each of you is made of. We will test your speed, your strength, your intelligence, and your will. Those who belong here will prove it. Those who do not will be sent home. He gestured to the equipment around the room. Choose your weapons. Show me what your species has taught you about war. Katie walked to the weapon racks. Everything there was made of energy and light. She picked up what looked like a sword, but it had no weight. She touched a gun-shaped object, and it lit up with symbols she could not read. Other students moved with confidence, selecting weapons that matched their biology and training. Katie felt lost and clumsy among the alien technology. Having trouble, Deathworlder? Velmoth appeared beside her. Perhaps your species is not ready for civilized warfare after all. Katie looked up at him. His eyes held something cold and cruel. She realized this would be about more than just training. This would be about proving that humans deserve to be here. I'm ready to learn, she said quietly. Velmoth smiled, showing teeth like crystal daggers. We shall see, he said. We shall see. 3 weeks passed since Katie first walked into the academy. Each day brought new challenges that tested her in ways she never expected. The alien technology still felt strange in her hands, but she was learning to use it. The energy weapons required a light touch that went against everything her Earth training had taught her. Human weapons needed firm grips and steady pressure. These alien tools responded to thoughts and gentle movements. Katie spent hours each night practicing, while her roommates slept. Instructor Velmoth made sure Katie's training was harder than everyone else's. While other students practiced with standard equipment, he gave her broken or outdated weapons. When they ran obstacle courses, he added extra barriers for her to climb. When they studied battle tactics, he questioned every answer she gave. Humans, think in straight lines, he would say to the class. They see a problem and attack it directly. This is why they remained trapped on one planet for so long. The other students watched these interactions with interest. Some seemed to feel sorry for Katie. Others nodded along with Velmoth's criticism. A few, like Kess, openly enjoyed seeing the human struggle. But Katie had advantages that surprised everyone. During endurance training, she outlasted students from species known for their stamina. When they practiced hand-to-hand combat, her compact build and Earth-trained reflexes gave her speed that the taller aliens could not match. One morning, the class ran through the Academy's forest simulator. The room created a perfect copy of a jungle world complete with thick trees, humid air, and dangerous animals. Other students used their species' natural abilities to navigate the terrain. Velnarans moved through the trees like dancers. Kreks used their powerful legs to leap between branches. Ethereals simply floated above the obstacles. Katie had to climb and crawl and fight her way through every inch of the course. She arrived at the finish line covered in mud and scratches, but she finished, and she finished ahead of half the class. Velmoth was waiting for her. Interesting, he said, looking at his timing device. It seems Deathworlders are good at surviving in harsh conditions. That's what we do, Katie panted. We adapt. Adaptation is useful, Velmoth agreed. But this is not a survival course. This is warrior training. Surviving is not the same as winning. He assigned Katie extra combat drills that afternoon. While other students rested, she practiced with energy blades until her arms ached. The weapons were lighter than Earth swords, but they required perfect balance to control their plasma edges. Lyra found her in the training room after dinner. You do not have to prove anything to him, the Kreks said. We can see you are strong. Katie lowered her practice sword. It's not about proving anything to him. It's about proving something to myself and to my people back home. Your people sent you here for a reason. Phantom appeared beside them, his electronic voice calm and measured. They must have known you could handle this. I hope so, Katie said. Sometimes I wonder if they just picked someone expendable. The next week brought combat evaluations. Students fought one-on-one matches to test their skills with different weapons and fighting styles. Katie watched the other matches carefully, learning how each species moved and attacked. Velnarans fought like dancers, all grace and flowing movements. Kreks used their natural armor and powerful strikes to overwhelm opponents. Ethereals were nearly impossible to hit, floating and dodging while striking with energy bolts. When Katie's first match came, she faced a Velnaran student named Yor. He was fast and elegant, spinning his energy staff in complex patterns that created barriers of light. Katie struggled to get close enough to attack, but she noticed something. Yor's movements followed patterns. He repeated the same sequences over and over. Katie watched for her chance, and then moved differently than he expected. Instead of attacking where he thought she would, she came from an angle his training had not prepared him for. Her energy blade found its mark. Yor yielded, surprise clear on his crystal features. Crude but effective, Velmoth announced to the class. The human uses unpredictable tactics because she lacks proper training, Katie wanted to argue, but she held her tongue. Let him think what he wanted. She was learning that being underestimated could be an advantage. Her next matches went better. She defeated a nervous Krek student by using her smaller size to avoid his powerful but slow attacks. She lost to an experienced ethereal who could attack from directions she could not defend against. But it was her match against Kess that drew the biggest crowd. Students from other training units came to watch. Word had spread about the rivalry between the human and the Velnaran noble. Kess entered the ring confident and smiling. He had trained with the best instructors on Velnar Prime since childhood. His family had produced generals and admirals for generations. He saw this match as a chance to put the upstart human in her place. Try not to embarrass your entire species, he said as they took their positions. Katie said nothing. She held her energy blade ready and waited for the signal to begin. The match started fast. Kess moved like liquid lightning, his blade leaving trails of blue fire in the air. Katie had to give ground immediately, dodging and blocking as best she could. The crowd murmured as the human was driven back step by step. But Katie was not just retreating. She was studying. She watched how Kess moved, where he put his weight, which attacks he favored. She let him think he was winning, while she learned everything she could about his style. When she finally attacked, it surprised everyone. Instead of the graceful exchanges they expected, Katie fought like the Deathworlder she was. She used her natural strength to power through Kess's defenses. She accepted hits that would have stopped other fighters and kept coming. Kess's confidence wavered as his elegant techniques failed to put Katie down. She fought through pain that should have ended the match. Her human endurance let her maintain pressure when other species would have collapsed. The turning point came when Kess overextended on a complex attack combination. Katie saw the opening and took it, even though it meant accepting a painful strike to her ribs. Her blade found Kess's shoulder and held there. For a moment, the ring was silent. Then Kess yielded, his face a mixture of shock and shame. The crowd erupted in noise. Some cheered for the upset victory. Others argued that Katie's tactics were not proper. Velmoth called for silence. An interesting match, he said loudly. We see here the difference between trained skill and raw aggression. The human won through persistence, not technique. Katie knew he was trying to diminish her victory, but she did not care. She had proven something important, not just to the watching students, but to herself. Later that night, Kess approached her in their shared room. His shoulder was bandaged where her blade had struck. I underestimated you, he said quietly. That was my mistake. We all make mistakes, Katie replied. That's how we learn. Kess nodded slowly. Perhaps there is more to humans than I thought. It was not friendship, but it was a start. Katie lay in her bed that night feeling better than she had since arriving at the academy. She was still an outsider, still struggling with alien technology and customs, but she was proving that humans belonged here. In the weeks that followed, some students began treating her differently. They still saw her as strange and primitive, but they also saw her as dangerous. That was something Katie could work with. Velmoth, however, became even more hostile. Katie's success seemed to anger him rather than impress him. He found new ways to make her training harder, new excuses, to criticize her performance. The Deathworlder had one lucky day, he told the class after Katie won another sparring match. Do not mistake persistence for skill. A broken clock is right twice a day. Katie endured his comments in silence. She was learning patience along with alien fighting techniques. But she could feel something building inside her, a pressure that grew stronger each day. The Academy was preparing for its annual War Games, a competition that would test everything the students had learned. Teams would be selected based on performance rankings, and Katie found herself fighting for a spot despite her victories. She could sense that her real test was still coming. Velmoth was building toward something, some final confrontation that would determine whether she stayed or was sent home in shame. Katie prepared for it as she prepared for everything else. With hard work, determination, and the knowledge that she represented more than just herself. She carried the hopes of her entire species on her shoulders. The pressure was enormous, but pressure was something humans understood. They had learned to thrive under it on a world that tried to kill them every day. Now Katie would show the galaxy what that kind of strength could accomplish. The Academy buzzed with excitement as the annual War Games approached. Students talked about nothing else during meals and study periods. This was their chance to prove themselves in front of military leaders from across the galaxy. The best performers would be recruited by elite units and fast-tracked to command positions. Katie watched the preparations with growing frustration. Despite her victories in individual combat, she found herself assigned to support roles in the upcoming exercises. While other students were chosen for assault teams and leadership positions, she was given tasks like equipment maintenance and communication relay. Instructor Velmoth posted the preliminary team assignments on a holographic display in the main training hall. Students crowded around to see where they had been placed. Katie pushed through the crowd until she could see her name listed under Support Personnel, Reserve Status. Disappointed, Deathworlder? Velmoth appeared beside her, his crystal features sharp with satisfaction. Command positions require more than brute strength. They require intelligence, tactical thinking, and the ability to work with advanced technology. Katie bit back her first response. She had learned that arguing with him only made things worse. I understand, sir. I'll do my best in whatever role I'm given. How refreshingly modest, Velmoth said. Perhaps you are finally learning your place here. But Katie's acceptance was only surface deep. Inside, anger burned like a nuclear reactor. She had outperformed half the students on the combat teams. She had shown adaptability and tactical thinking that impressed even her harshest critics. The only thing she lacked was the political connections that seemed to matter more than actual ability. Over the next few days, Velmoth's persecution reached new levels. He sabotaged her equipment during training exercises, giving her weapons with drained power cells or damaged targeting systems. When she adapted and found ways to succeed anyway, he claimed her improvisation showed poor preparation. During a urban warfare simulation, he programmed the enemy AI to target her specifically. while other students faced normal opposition. Katie found herself under constant bombardment from multiple directions. She survived by using tactics that would have been impossible for other species, taking damage that would have hospitalized a Velnaran or Krex. "The humans' reckless approach endangers the entire team," Velmoth announced after the exercise. "In real combat, such disregard for safety protocols would get everyone killed." Katie's roommates began to notice the obvious bias. Even Kess, who had initially supported Velmoth's treatment of her, started expressing doubts about the instructor's methods. "He is being unfair," Lyra said one evening as they studied together. "Your performance scores are higher than mine, but I am on the primary assault team while you are relegated to support. Fairness is not the point," Phantom added through his communication screen. "He wants to prove that humans do not belong here. Your success threatens his worldview." Katie appreciated their support, but it did not change her situation. If anything, Velmoth seemed to resent the fact that other students were beginning to respect her. He started making comments about alien species being corrupted by human influence. The breaking point came during a live fire exercise designed to test reaction. Times and target discrimination. Students had to navigate a maze filled with holographic enemies while avoiding civilian targets. Success required speed, accuracy, and split-second decision-making. Katie entered the maze with standard academy equipment, but she quickly realized something was wrong. Her targeting system kept malfunctioning, showing false readings that made it impossible to distinguish between enemies and civilians. Her weapon's power output fluctuated randomly, sometimes firing full-strength bolts when she intended warning shots. Despite the sabotaged equipment, Katie adapted. She relied on her natural reflexes and Earth-trained instincts to navigate the course. When her targeting system failed completely, she learned to identify threats by movement patterns and positioning. When her weapon became unreliable, she used it sparingly and relied on tactical positioning instead. She emerged from the maze with a respectable score despite the handicaps. Other students who had watched the exercise knew something was wrong with her equipment, but none of them spoke up publicly. Velmoth reviewed her performance with obvious disappointment. "Marginal," he announced. "The human's reliance on primitive instincts over technology shows why her species struggles with modern warfare." That night, Katie found it hard to sleep. The constant stress and unfair treatment were wearing on her, in ways that physical challenges never could. She had faced deadly predators on Earth, survived in hostile environments, and pushed her body to its limits. But psychological warfare was different. It attacked her confidence and made her question everything she thought she knew about herself. The Academy's observation deck became her refuge. Late at night, when other students were sleeping, she would go there to look out at the stars. Earth was too far away to see, but knowing it was out there gave her strength. On one such night, Lyra found her there. The Krex moved quietly across the deck and settled beside her, mandibles clicking softly in what Katie had learned was a sign of concern. "You are troubled," Lyra observed. "Just thinking," Katie replied. "Wondering if I made a mistake coming here." "Velmoth is wrong about you," Lyra said firmly. "Your species may be different, but different does not mean inferior. We Krex learned this when we first encountered the ethereals. They were so unlike us that many thought them unnatural. But they taught us new ways of thinking that made us stronger." Katie smiled at her friend. "Thanks. That helps." "Do not let him break your spirit," Lyra continued. "That is what he wants. If he can make you quit, he can claim that humans are weak. If he can make you fail, he can say, "We were right to exclude your species." The next morning brought the announcement Katie had been dreading. The final training exercise before team. Selections would take place in the Academy's most advanced holographic arena. Students would face a complex scenario involving multiple objectives, enemy types, and environmental hazards. Performance in this exercise would determine final War Games assignments. Velmoth explained the scenario to the assembled students. They would be tasked with rescuing hostages from a space station under attack by unknown forces. The mission required stealth, combat skills, technical expertise, and leadership decision-making. Each student would face the scenario individually, and their choices would be recorded and analyzed. This exercise will separate those who belong in elite units from those who should remain in support roles, Velmoth announced. His eyes found Katie in the crowd. Some of you may find the challenges overwhelming. There is no shame in requesting withdrawal before the exercise begins. Katie felt every eye in the room turn to her. The invitation to quit was clearly directed at her. She stood straighter and met Velmoth's gaze without flinching. "I'm ready, sir," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Velmoth's smile was sharp as a blade. "Excellent. We shall see just how ready you are." Students entered the arena one by one throughout the day. Katie watched the others emerge afterward, some looking triumphant, others dejected. The scenario was apparently more difficult than previous. Exercises, with several normally confident students looking shaken by their experiences. When Katie's turn came, she entered the arena with determination, but also wariness. She had learned not to trust anything Velmoth arranged for her. The chamber was completely empty when she entered, just white walls and a smooth floor. Then the holographic projectors activated and reality disappeared. She found herself standing in the corridor of a damaged space station. Warning lights flashed red, and emergency announcements echoed through the halls. According to her mission briefing, hostile forces had taken control of the station and were holding civilian researchers hostage. Her job was to neutralize the threats and rescue the innocents. Katie moved carefully through the station, using cover and checking corners like her Earth military training had taught her. The scenario was impressively realistic, with smoke, sparks, and debris making navigation difficult. She encountered enemy soldiers that moved and fought with convincing artificial intelligence. But as she progressed, Katie began to notice irregularities. Enemy units appeared in impossible numbers, spawning from areas she had already cleared. Her equipment malfunctioned at critical moments, forcing her to improvise solutions. Objectives changed without warning, and her communication system provided contradictory information. It became clear that the scenario was rigged against her, just like every other test Velmoth had designed. But Katie had expected this. She adapted to each new challenge, using her human flexibility and problem-solving skills to overcome obstacles that would have stopped other species. She was nearing the hostage location when Velmoth himself appeared, in the corridor ahead of her. In the context of the simulation, he was supposedly an Academy observer present to evaluate her performance. But Katie could see the cruel satisfaction in his crystal features. "Interesting performance so far," he said, moving closer. "Though I notice you continue to rely on crude improvisations rather than proper technique." Time seemed to slow as Katie processed what had just happened. Blood from her broken nose dripped onto the simulation floor while pain shot through her skull, but the physical damage was nothing compared to the rage building inside her chest. Velmoth stood before her, his crystal features twisted with cruel satisfaction. He believed he had finally proven his point about human inferiority. He had struck a student under the protection of instructor privilege, confident that Academy protocols would prevent any response. But Velmoth had forgotten one crucial detail about the simulation system. By activating full combat mode to justify his attack, he had removed all safety restrictions. Katie was no longer bound by the rules that normally protected instructors from their students. She could see this realization dawning in his translucent features as she straightened up and wiped blood from her mouth. His confidence wavered as he noticed the change in her posture, the way her muscles coiled like springs ready to release. "Now you will see what proper combat technique looks like," Velmoth said, trying to maintain his authority. But his voice carried a note of uncertainty that had not been there before. He raised his hands in a defensive stance, energy crackling between his fingers. Velnarans could generate bioelectric fields that could stun or paralyze most species. It was a natural advantage that had made them dominant in their region of space for millennia. Katie watched him prepare his attack with the same cold calculation she might use to study a dangerous predator. She had learned about Velnaran combat capabilities during her time at the Academy. She knew their strengths, their preferred tactics, and most importantly, their weaknesses. Velmoth struck first, sending a bolt of crackling energy toward Katie's chest. It was a move designed to end the fight immediately, to drop her unconscious and prove once and for all that humans did not belong among civilized species. But Katie was already moving. She had anticipated the attack from the moment she saw him shift his weight. While other species might have tried to dodge backward or to the side, Katie moved forward, and at an angle that Velmoth's training had never prepared him for. The energy bolt passed harmlessly through the space where she had been standing. Katie's momentum carried her inside Velmoth's reach before he could prepare a second attack. Her left hand clamped onto his extended wrist while her right struck upward into his elbow joint. The sound that followed echoed through the simulation, chamber like a gunshot. Velmoth's arm bent in a direction that nature had never intended, bones snapping cleanly through crystal-hard cartilage. His scream was a harmony of pain and shock that no Velnaran throat should have been able to produce. But Katie was not finished. Even as Velmoth's arm broke, she was already executing the next phase of her attack. Her grip on his wrist tightened as she pivoted, using his own body weight against him. A sweep of her leg removed his balance, and she controlled his fall with mechanical precision. Velmoth hit the floor hard, his working arm instinctively reaching for his injured limb. Katie followed him down, her knee finding the nerve cluster at the base of his neck. Not enough pressure to cause permanent damage, but more than sufficient to keep him conscious while completely helpless. The entire sequence took exactly 30 seconds from beginning to end. But to the observers watching through the arena's monitoring system, it seemed both instantaneous and eternal. They had seen Katie move from victim to victor in a display of combat efficiency that left them stunned. Katie knelt over her defeated instructor, blood still flowing from her broken nose. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but carried clearly through the chamber's audio pickups. "Humans don't just survive on death worlds," she said, looking down at Velmoth's pain-twisted features. "We thrive there. We evolve there. We learn that sometimes the only way to deal with a predator is to show it what a real apex species looks like." She increased the pressure on his neck just enough to ensure his complete attention. "You wanted to see human combat techniques. What you just experienced is called escalation control. We assess the threat level and respond with exactly the amount of force necessary to neutralize it. No more, no less." Velmoth tried to speak, but could only produce gasping sounds. His broken arm lay at an impossible angle, but Katie's nerve pressure kept him from losing consciousness. She wanted him aware for every moment of his defeat. "The difference between us and you," Katie continued, "is that you struck me in anger to prove your superiority. I broke your arm as a tactical necessity to end a threat to my safety. You fought with emotion. I fought with purpose." She released the pressure on his neck and stood up, stepping back to a safe distance. Velmoth curled around his injured arm, gasping and whimpering. The arrogant instructor who had tormented her for weeks was gone, replaced by something broken and pathetic. "Simulation end," Katie called out loudly. "Instructor down and requiring medical attention." The holographic space station dissolved around them, leaving only the white-walled arena chamber. Emergency medical teams rushed in within seconds, their scanners immediately assessing Velmoth's injuries. A clean break to the radius and ulna bones, severe but repairable with proper treatment. Katie stood to one side as the medics worked, her own injury forgotten in the aftermath of combat. Blood continued to flow from her nose, but she ignored it. Pain was temporary. What mattered was that she had proven her point in a language that every species in the galaxy understood. Commander Zethkar entered the arena, accompanied by several other high-ranking Academy officials. His silver markings pulsed with agitation as he surveyed the scene. Velmoth being loaded onto a medical transport, Katie standing calm and bloodied in the center of the chamber. "Explain," the commander said simply. Katie straightened to attention despite her injuries. "Instructor Velmoth struck me without warning during the training exercise, sir. I responded with appropriate defensive force to neutralize the threat. The simulation logs will tell us exactly what happened," another officer said, activating a holographic playback system. "Let us review the sequence of events." They watched the encounter play out from multiple angles. The unprovoked attack, Katie's lightning-fast response, the precise application of force that ended the confrontation without unnecessary brutality. The officials murmured among themselves in several alien languages. Commander Zethkar studied the playback with particular attention to the timing. 30 seconds, he noted. "From assault to complete victory in 30 seconds. Sir, I want to emphasize that I used only the minimum force necessary to protect myself," Katie said. "I could have inflicted far more serious injuries, but I chose not to." "Yes," the commander said thoughtfully. "We can see that. Your restraint is noted and appreciated." One of the other officers stepped forward. "There will need to be a formal investigation, of course, but the preliminary evidence suggests that Instructor Velmoth violated several Academy regulations regarding student safety and proper conduct." Another official reviewed data on his tablet. "The student's response appears to fall within acceptable parameters for self-defense under galactic military law. The force used was proportionate to the threat faced." Katie felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had been prepared for punishment, expulsion, or worse. Instead, it seemed that Academy justice would actually be fair for once. Commander Zethkar approached her directly. "You are injured. Report to medical for treatment." "Sir, I can continue training if needed," Katie replied. "That was not a request," the commander said, but there was something new in his voice when he spoke to her. Respect, perhaps, or at least recognition. "You will also be reassigned to Combat Team Alpha for the War Games." Katie blinked in surprise. Alpha Team was the Academy's premier unit, reserved for the most promising students. "Sir?" Your performance today demonstrated capabilities that were previously unrecognized, the commander explained. It would be wasteful to leave such talents in a support role. As Katie left the arena for medical treatment, she could hear the officials continuing their discussion behind her. Words like exceptional reflexes, tactical brilliance, and natural warrior instincts reached her ears. In the medical bay, a Krex doctor efficiently reset her broken nose while commenting on human bone, density and healing capabilities. Other students who had heard about the incident found excuses to visit the medical bay, stealing glances at the human who had defeated an instructor in single combat. Lyra and Phantom arrived together, worry clear in their alien features. "We heard what happened," Lyra said, her mandibles clicking with distress. "Are you badly hurt?" "I'm fine," Katie assured them. "It looks worse than it is." "The entire academy is talking about it," Phantom reported through his communication screen. "Students are saying you moved faster than their eyes could follow." Katie touched her bandaged nose gingerly. "I moved as fast as I needed to. Nothing more." But even as she downplayed the incident to her friends, Katie knew that something fundamental had changed. For weeks she had been seen as an outsider, a primitive trying to prove herself among superior beings. Now she was something else entirely. She was a human who had shown the galaxy exactly what that meant. And 30 seconds had been more than enough time to make her point clear to everyone watching. The Academy felt different after the incident in the simulation chamber. Katie noticed it immediately as she walked through the halls with her bandaged nose and 2 black eyes. Students no longer stared at her with curiosity or disdain. Now they watched her with something closer to wariness, the way prey animals watch predators. Word of what happened spread through the Academy faster than light through hyperspace. The story grew with each telling, but the core facts remained the same. The human had broken an instructor's arm in 30 seconds. She had done it calmly, precisely, and with a level of controlled violence that shocked species who thought they understood warfare. Commander Zethkar called Katie to his office 3 days after the incident. The investigation had concluded, and Velmoth had been dismissed from the Academy in disgrace. The official report stated that he had violated fundamental principles of instructor conduct and student safety. "The matter is closed," the commander informed her. "Instructor Velmoth will not be returning to teach here or at any other military academy. His conduct was unbecoming an officer and a gentleman." Katie sat straighter in her chair. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate the Academy's fair handling of this situation." "Do not misunderstand," Zethkar continued. "While your response was legally justified, it has created complications. Many faculty members are now concerned about having humans in their classes. They worry about their own safety should conflicts arise." The commander's silver markings shifted in patterns Katie had learned indicated deep thought. "However, there are others who believe this incident has revealed something valuable about human capabilities. Admiral Krentar of the Galactic Defense Fleet has specifically requested a meeting with you." Katie felt her heart skip. Admiral Krentar was one of the most respected military leaders in the galaxy, a Velneron who had commanded successful campaigns against 3 different hostile species. His interest could mean great opportunities or terrible consequences. "When would the Admiral like to meet, sir?" she asked. "After the war games," Zethkar replied. "Your performance there will determine the nature of that conversation." Katie's new assignment to Combat Team Alpha brought its own challenges. The team consisted of the Academy's elite students, each handpicked for exceptional ability in their species' preferred combat methods. Katie found herself working alongside beings who had been groomed for military leadership since childhood. Team Alpha's leader was Zendar, a Velnaran whose family had produced admirals for 6 generations. He was brilliant, experienced, and initially skeptical about having a human added to his carefully balanced unit. "I do not question the commander's decision," he told Katie during their first team meeting, "but I must understand your capabilities before I can properly utilize them." The other team members introduced themselves with polite reserve. There was Vex, a Krex heavy weapons specialist whose carapace bore the scars of dozens of training battles. Whisper was an ethereal scout who could phase through solid matter for short periods. Nova was another Velnaran, a technology specialist who could interface directly with most computer systems. "We have trained together for 18 months, Zendar explained. "Our tactics are precisely coordinated to take advantage of each member's unique abilities. Integrating a new team member so close to the war games is highly irregular." Katie understood his concern. She was the unknown variable in a finely tuned equation. "What do you need me to do?" "Show us what humans bring to combat that we cannot replicate with our existing capabilities," Zendar said bluntly. The next few weeks were the most intense training Katie had ever experienced. Team Alpha operated at a level far beyond the standard academy curriculum. They practiced assault techniques on multiple types of terrain, defended positions against overwhelming odds, and executed complex multi-phase operations that required split-second timing. Katie struggled at first to integrate with their existing tactics. Her human approach to problems often conflicted with the elegant solutions her teammates preferred. But gradually, they began to see the value in her different perspective. During an urban warfare exercise, the team was tasked with capturing a fortified position defended by advanced AI opponents. Zendar's initial plan relied on technical superiority and coordinated energy weapons fire. It was tactically sound but predictable. Katie suggested a modification that horrified her teammates. Instead of the clean, precise assault they had planned, she proposed what she called controlled chaos. The team would deliberately create multiple simultaneous crises that would overwhelm the AI's decision-making protocols. "That is madness," Nova protested. "You want us to intentionally put ourselves in danger to confuse the enemy." "Danger is relative," Katie replied. "What seems dangerous to you might be routine for someone who grew up dodging predators. The AI expects logical, efficient tactics. We give it something illogical but effective." Zendar considered her proposal carefully. "Explain exactly how this would work." Katie outlined a plan that combined Vex's heavy weapons with Whisper's phasing ability and Nova's technical skills. But instead of using these abilities in the sophisticated combinations their training emphasized, she wanted them to create overlapping zones of confusion and misdirection. The plan worked brilliantly. The AI defenders found themselves responding to threats that appeared and disappeared faster than their programming could track. Katie's role was to exploit the gaps this created, moving through areas the AI had temporarily abandoned while chasing other targets. Team Alpha captured their objective in record time with 0 casualties. Zendar stared at the mission results with something approaching disbelief. "Your tactics should not have worked," he said to Katie afterward. "They violated every principle of efficient resource allocation and risk management." "They worked because they violated those principles," Katie explained. "Sometimes the best strategy is to do something so unexpected that your enemy cannot adapt in time." Word of Team Alpha's innovative tactics spread through the academy. Other teams began requesting cross-training sessions to learn these human methods. Katie found herself in the strange position of teaching alien warriors how to think like predators from a death world. The war games themselves took place on a barren moon orbiting Velnar Prime. 12 teams from the Academy would compete in a series of escalating challenges designed to test every aspect of military capability. The exercises would be observed by military leaders from across the galaxy, with the winning team receiving immediate commissions in elite units. Team Alpha's first challenge involved establishing a forward operating base while under constant harassment from enemy drones. Standard doctrine called for defensive positions and careful resource management. Katie convinced her teammates to try something different. Instead of building static defenses, they created a mobile base that could relocate every few hours. Instead of conserving resources, they used them aggressively to eliminate threats before they could establish patterns. It was exhausting and dangerous, but it kept their enemies off balance throughout the exercise. Other teams watched these tactics with fascination and horror. The elegant Velnaran teams found them crude and wasteful. The methodical Krex teams thought them inefficient, but none of them could argue with the results. Team Alpha advanced through each phase of the competition, often by using strategies that seemed to violate common sense. Katie's human perspective gave them options that other teams could not even conceive, while her teammates' skills allowed them to execute those options with alien precision. The final challenge brought all surviving teams together in a massive, free-for-all scenario. Multiple objectives had to be captured and held while eliminating enemy teams and dealing with environmental hazards. It was chaos on a scale that tested every lesson the students had learned. Katie found herself in her element. While other teams struggled to adapt their careful plans to the fluid situation, she thrived in the uncertainty. Her teammates followed her lead as she guided them through the madness with the instincts of a species that had learned to thrive in chaos. When the simulation ended, Team Alpha held more objectives than any other unit. They had eliminated 3 enemy teams while suffering only minor casualties. Most impressively, they had accomplished this while using 60% fewer resources than their closest competitors. The award ceremony took place in the Academy's Great Hall, with representatives from dozens of worlds watching via holographic link. Admiral Krentar himself presented the championship trophy to Team Alpha, his ancient eyes studying each member carefully. When he reached Katie, he paused. "So you are the human who has caused such discussion among our military leaders." "I hope I have represented my species well, sir," Katie replied. "Indeed you have," the Admiral said. "Your people have a saying, do they not? If you want peace, prepare for war." "Yes, sir. Though we also say that the best victory is one you never have to fight for." Admiral Krentar's crystal features shifted in what might have been amusement. Wisdom and pragmatism. Excellent qualities. In a warrior. After the ceremony, Katie stood with her teammates on the Academy's observation deck, looking out at the stars. Earth was invisible among the billions of points of light, but she knew it was out there. She had done what she came here to do.